There has been a ceasefire in Gaza now going on a few weeks. In the first wave of the ceasefire, the hostages, the living hostages, were turned over, Israeli hostages, to Israel. Hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, those who have yet to have charges brought against them, and those charged with acts of terrorism, were released from Israeli custody in response as part of the deal. After that was done, there was supposed to be a multiple wave of Israeli withdrawals that coincide with different stages of Hamas's demilitarization, stepping down from power, and the Palestinian Authority, the PA, taking over the Gaza Strip as elections are held, with the meantime, the authority being held by an international body that is appointed by a board headed by Donald Trump. It had 20 points. It was a plan. You know, was it exactly a clear-cut plan? Maybe the not most clear-cut plan, but it was a plan to eventually get Israeli soldiers out of Gaza with time and to stop the fighting as of right now. And they agreed to it. They exchanged hostages, and then the lack of fighting broke down very quickly. First off, Hamas started to mobilize its fighters in Gaza in the immediate aftermath of the ceasefire, as they saw their ability to have hold on power, their ability to, hold the Gaza Strip and be politically influential. They saw that slipping. They also saw I don't even know if I'd call them pro-Israeli. I would just call them Israeli supported militias. They clashed and feuded with Hamas, and some of them were taken and executed in the public street. And it was quite a dramatic scene as these executions were going off. And immediately as these executions started going off, people started thinking like, wait, if they're executing all these people, if Hamas has mobilized these thousands of fighters to establish control over this area of the Gaza Strip, then are they going to demilitarize? I mean, that was part of the agreement. Part of the agreement was not just that the violence immediately stops and Israeli soldiers and Hamas fighters stop shooting each other. It was also that they demilitarize and give up power in exchange for the amnesty that they would get. But if they are currently fighting with pro-Israeli, Israeli-backed militias, and these Israeli-backed militias, these are killers. These are thugs. If they're going out there and they're fighting with these guys, what's the future of demilitarization? What's the future of them fulfilling that promise? Well, it doesn't really look that promising. And so eventually, after these executions, there were some Palestinians who, according to the Israelis, stepped over the line of withdrawal and they shot some Palestinian civilians. There were also instances where 2 Israeli soldiers were killed. And after those 2 Israeli soldiers were killed by, I don't know if they were Hamas fighters. I don't know if they were Palestinian Islamic Jihad fighters. I don't know what it was, but they were killed. And Israel responded to that and the swath of executions with airstrikes, blowing up buildings in the Strip, killing dozens of Palestinians. The Israeli military has said it will resume enforcement of the ceasefire in Gaza after launching airstrikes on Sunday in response to what it called Hamas's blatant violation of the deal. Strikes began in southern Gaza after the Israeli military said terrorists fired an anti-tank missile and gunfire towards its troops in Rafah, killing 2 soldiers. Hamas said it was unaware of any clashes in the area under Israeli control. By evening, Israel said it had hit Hamas targets across Gaza, with hospital sources saying 44 people were killed. Hamas had said it was committed to the ceasefire, but accused Israel of violations inward strikes could push the situation towards total collapse. After 2100 local time, the IDF said it had begun renewed enforcement of the ceasefire, adding that it would uphold the agreement and respond firmly to any violations of it. The statement did not directly specify whether an earlier announcement to suspend aid entering Gaza had already been reversed, had also been reversed. So they had stopped the ceasefire for a little bit, fired a bunch of shots, stopped aid, then stopped the shots, announced that at 2100 hours, but we have yet to hear an announcement of whether or not they are going to allow the aid back in. So this shows that the Israelis are more than willing to use force past the end of the ceasefire, and the immediate fear that some might think could exist in the mind of Netanyahu of Trump's retaliation of the suspension of weapons shipments or XYZ, depending upon how the ceasefire goes, as Donald Trump wants to be seen as the peacemaker. And if violence completely spirals out of control and we're right back to like ground offensive operations or near daily airstrikes, then Donald Trump can call it peace. I mean, he called the Congo peace while massacres were going on, but the Congo was never getting as much attention as the Gaza Strip. And so this is something he's going to be more sensitive about. But they show that they're willing to do airstrikes anyway, that they're willing to do very deadly airstrikes. I mean, that's 44 lives. And they also showed that they were willing to take out Palestinians who they say crossed the line. So I think that there is a really good chance that this is not the last wave of violence. I said when the deal was signed that my concern was whether or not Hamas would feel compelled once, you know, the hostages were exchanged and they got some Palestinian hostages back, once they had given up that leverage, once that's done, they would really give up their guns and they would demilitarize, because that means giving up leverage, that means giving up potential lethal force, that means giving up an ability to control the Gaza Strip with lethal force. And considering that the Israelis are sponsoring militias so they can have more influence in the Gaza Strip, and they would very much like to see other forces come to power, including forces that might not be as dedicated to a future Palestinian state, which is something that this Israeli government very much would like to sabotage. I mean, look, my fear was that they would not go through with it. That in the long run, Hamas's goals of creating a Palestinian state and having political control would run headlong into this ceasefire or peace deal, because Israel is not willing to accept Hamas continuing to have control in Gaza under any circumstances, up into and including all previous statements made to this point as of October 22nd, 2025. And as those two sides are inconsolable, Hamas does not want to give up all of its power or all of its guns. Israel does not want Hamas to be a thing. And it was a potential point of clash. And Donald Trump keeps announcing peace, keeps declaring peace and flowers and clouds and rainbows, keeps declaring these things before we really know that they're here. And he certainly, before he's established that he can maintain it. The Congo is the clearest example. He declares peace after high pressure negotiations with the leader of the Congo and the leader of Rwanda, but did not include the M23 rebels. That was what Qatar was doing. And so the M23 rebels continued to clash. Then the pro-government militias continued to clash. Then the Islamic State aligned ADF continued to massacre hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds dead. And they're like, okay, well, that doesn't seem very peaceful. That doesn't seem like a successful peace deal, even though Trump continues to claim it. If we had a more aggressive press, if we had a press that could get information to people, that would be a political killer. For any other administration, that might be a political killer. Not because everybody would care about the Congo, but the image of mission accomplished on that banner as it's falling down on that aircraft carrier from Bush. You know, that image being repeated is not something any politician should desire. So I think that the signs were there. Trump has not really been good at building the building blocks. He has the highest chance of success, in my opinion, in the Middle East. In the Middle East, the United States has outsized economic leverage, a very outsized military leverage, and Donald Trump is somebody who's very willing to play personally corrupt. And when you're dealing with a region of greedy royals, that actually might be useful. And so I think that out of all the regions where Donald Trump could potentially have success, and I really am hoping that there is success, because my God, we don't really, I mean, 65 to 67,000 dead in Gaza. Of course, you've got the thousands dead on the Israeli side as well, despite the gigantic disparity. And really, we don't even know if that's really inclusive of all the dead. There are still many people that are missing and many corpses that can be assumed that are lost under the rubble. So if we can avoid another war, I don't care if Trump claims credit for it. I don't care who claims credit for it. I hope history and I hope we are honest about who ended up bringing that about. But if Donald Trump can't maintain the peace, then he has not achieved peace. Peace is not just a word that you gold plate and you put it on the side of one of your buildings and you say, ta-da, or you do it with a steak, or you do it with a clothing line. It's something that needs to be actively maintained, and you need to try to control the factors that could, potentially blow up in your face. I.e., in reference to this, a factor that could blow up in somebody's face could be, does Hamas really want to disarm? Does Hamas really want to give up power? Another factor that could blow up in your face is people like Smotrich or other far-right people in the Israeli cabinet who have zero interest in this war stopping and want to continue the war because they want to control the Gaza Strip, period, end of paragraph, no compromise, forever. And you got to look up at all these potential places of combustion, and you need to not only control for them at the outset, but control for them in the long run. Control for them a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, that you can control for these factors. And Trump, with his attention span, considering how in-depth he wants to get on these missions, with he's literally throwing Ukrainian war maps off, like, I don't want to see this, Zelensky. I'm tired of it. Follow through might be a problem for Trump. I mean, it might say something that first term Trump, one of the ways that the people around him that were trying to keep the country afloat, what they did to try to contain the damage he did is he would say something stupid, like he'd make a stupid suggestion, like make every Tuesday Taco Tuesday federally, give everyone tacos. I don't know, something silly. And he'd and they would be, oh yeah, sure, Mr. President. And they just would never mention it again. And there was like a 50-50 chance Trump would just forget about it and never bring it up again. And before you did anything else to try to move him off the ball, just say, sure, Mr. President, and forget about it. There's a reason why that reputation exists. Then again, he wants to keep that peacemaker reputation. But a desire for the reputation and good branding, a peace deal, and a stable peace for sure, does not make. Question. The reason why I have shaky faith in the ceasefire, I've laid out clearly. But I mean, you could also take a hint from the people who are part of this administration who seem to also have maybe less than foolhardy confidence in the ceasefire. Listen to Mr. J.D. Vance.
Well, Jared's the investor here. I'm not going to give you a percentage, but look, what we've seen the past week gives me great optimism the ceasefire is going to hold. And if we get from where we were a week ago to a long-term durable peace between Israel and Gaza, there are going to be hills and valleys. There are going to be moments where it looks like things aren't going particularly well. But given that, and given the history of conflict, I think that everybody should be proud of where we are today.
I mean, like 44 dead, the airstrikes. I mean, that is today. If we, I don't know if we should be particularly proud of that. Look, there is it guaranteed that the ceasefire falls apart? No, and I hope it doesn't. I hope the ceasefire stays together. I hope it works. I think there's reasons for Israel to wipe their hands with this, and I think there is a lot of reasons for the Palestinians. Hamas, I think it's a little bit more confusing, especially since there's no guarantee for a Palestinian state in this agreement, and they have always said that they will not agree to demilitarize until a Palestinian state is guaranteed. And I'm not even talking about the problems on the Israeli side right now with the far-right coalition and motivations to continue, motivations to expand more violence into the West Bank. But as of right now, despite the massacres, Vance is saying that the deal is going better than expected. Despite the executions, despite the airstrikes, they say that it is going better than expected. My question is, what did they expect? That's my first question. And my second question is, how do we measure success? Because how many airstrikes can we see before we say that, no, this isn't a bump in the road is just bumpy?